Folks, yesterday when we checked on Crucible of the Storms, it looked like it was going to take a little bit of time before we started to see guilds catch up on that first boss on Cabal, but sure enough, about 6 guilds have gotten it down at this point, and now our focus is on that second boss, the final boss of this raid, and one thing is for certain, Uu'nat, you not easy to kill. That's the only thing that is for sure. My name is Rich, and I'm going to be joined here by Final Boss, and also our guest to kick off the show today is going to be none other than Caden.
Caden, are you ready?
What's new, man?
Yeah. Oh God, that setup was so good. It's so good.
I was at the dog park and all the dogs were running around, and I was like, Uu'nat, what can we do with this one? What can we do with this one? And that's kind of the question that all these guilds have been asking themselves as well, right? Like this is a very difficult raid thus far. The tuning is something that we haven't seen before. And Caden, you can kind of shine some spotlight on what a project like this is potentially like when we think of the Blizzard kind of creating not this giant raid, but a 2-boss raid to come out in between this and 8.2. So, like, how different is this than what the team is used to doing?
It's weird because you don't see content like this very often. Like the only other thing I can think of that's pretty similar would be Ruby Sanctum, where it kind of fit in a gap where you had a content lull between patches, and they were thinking of, oh, this raid tier would fit really well here, as well as tell the story and set up on like little points that Novel really talked about yesterday, which was really insightful. But it's in a perfect little gap. And I think it was just happened to be a perfect storm for encounter design to have this little mini raid where they could kind of slide content in between these bigger beats when you see like a Desire lore. Obviously, 2 bosses are way easier to manage than 8, but it's interesting to see how when you're focused specifically on 2 bosses, I think what shines out really well in this is the focus on the individual quality for the 2 bosses. It was very interesting to see. I mean, the tuning seems like it felt great for the most part on the first day. So I'd love to hear more method perspective on that, or some of the other guilds' perspective on it that have killed it already. But I think they were talking a lot about how it felt really good to have a boss kind of put up a fight, even though you're coming in geared as hell for it.
Yeah, Final Boss, I feel like from everything that we've heard, obviously we haven't had any of the raiders on the show yet. We're yet. Is that a secret? Is that alluding to things that are going to be happening today? Maybe. But I think when we pop into streams, Final Boss, we just do really hear a lot. Even people that are struggling to take down these 2 bosses just going, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, this is tuned relatively well. So how do you feel about the tuning? And then we can kind of lay Cabal to rest. I feel like that's our first job, is just to say, okay, this is what we thought of Cabal. Let's look forward to the real prize.
Yeah, well, it's strange in that way. Ian Hazacostas' Forbes interview now, which may or may not be taken by the internet and memed somewhat because of the tuning and balancing that he talked about, how the Restless Cabal is like middle to endish, like Rastakhan, Mechatork level difficulty, like in BOD. And then the Uu'nat encounter is more like Cayna. Sure. 120 aggregate to like 200 plus pulls, I think would disagree with that assessment. So I think the Restless Cabal was quite a bit more of a feat. I do have sitting over here, we have permission to watch through the world first for the Restless Cabal, which we could get to at some point in time today.
Cool.
We have Pieces' POV here just to see what they did when they clenched the victory first yesterday. But there are certain encounters that come out that you look at least from like the world first scope when you're on the sidelines, when you're watching as a spectator, you're like, well, class stacking, check. Whatever tanks are the best in the meta right now, the shield boys, check. And
I mean, class stacking is normal, at least in this caliber, but
sure.
What's abnormal here, shaman class stacking.
Hey,
Feels good, man. Feels good.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, what is happening? There's 5 shamans in a world first like progress here. Like,
I think your issue is that it's not shaman class stacking, because resto shamans have been seen historically, right?
Fair.
ever since SLT had multiple charges, because that's a good spell. But no, it's DPS shaman. And the only time I can ever think three of them for sure.
What?
The last time I think a DPS shaman that got that much of a spotlight, I believe, was Iliayo back in for Mythic Cho'Gall in Warlords of Draenor.
You shamans remember everything good that's ever happened to you, huh?
He got us nerfed. It was Fire Nova was so good, he got the spec nerfed like right after it happened. It's like, okay, sure, fine.
Oh,
I get this because I play a rep paladin. We have majority of the time we're mediocre, but man, those spots of time when we are gods, you dream about those at night.
I've gotten I got some flack when demonology got good, and you know all of like the really high end warlocks were hitting me up.
Yeah, you got demonology nerfed.
Yeah, and I got blamed for the nerfs. You know, like Zyro hit me up, Deep Shades hit me up, Marv hit me up. Like everybody's telling me everything, and then all of a sudden I'm frying, and I start talking about it, and the next day it gets nerfed. And the amount of DMs I got, like, you ruined demonology for me. I cried for like 6 days. But yeah, we're gonna be back on the top soon. That's how it goes for warlocks, for shamans. It doesn't happen.
I got the same thing with the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, it was like cutting out real bad. I got the same thing real bad with Light's Decree. When Light's Decree was nerfed, was it a patch ago? I think it was during like right before bot progression was Light's Decree got a nerf, and I had posted about it like a couple of days before it was coming because I was like, this is a little too strong, a little too strong. And then the nerf came through, and all the rep paladins messaged me, and they're like, you horrible human being,
you can't be that guy. Yeah, you can't ever be that guy. That's like the narc move. That's the narc move. Like, you can't ever say that ability is too strong. Like, you just can't do it. So the kind of where we're at right now in the race, though, folks, for everybody who's just getting here right now. Also, Caden, for anybody who doesn't know Caden used to be one of the CMs over at Blizzard. Now he's been doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff. He's got a bunch of cool stuff coming up very shortly. And one of the awesome things is actually getting to check out his streams and seeing his interesting takes on everything. Are you going to be streaming while you're in Texas?
Probably not, because I'm just hanging out with family. I'll be back on like Monday though, so I'll probably come home and stream. I mainly came home so I could watch Endgame with my friends.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. I think I'm checking that out tomorrow. Yeah, I'm seeing it tomorrow. So that's definitely one of the fun things to get to do this weekend. There's like Thrones, Endgame, and a world first race. It's actually a pretty solid weekend. And it doesn't matter if it rains. I've been trying to jet ski for like 3 weeks now, and it's rained every weekend. And now I have the content to make it okay to rain and not jet ski. It's fantastic. This weekend is going to be better than jet skiing with the boys because we got a world first race. And where we stand right now, the second boss is going to be our focus. Cabal has fallen, and the first guild to get it down was Pieces. This is some serious competition coming out of them. Pieces is one of the guilds that started to have really impressive. They've been a good guild for a long time, but on top of that,
they've been consistently top 10 for quite a while, which was funny that a lot of people were surprised at them, like they were a dark horse.
Yeah, but the thing is like the reason that they are always a dark horse is just because we know that they don't raid the same hours that a lot of the other top 10 guilds do. And now we have a tier where that time investment may be needed a little bit less because there are less bosses. Inherently, you're going to need less time. So is this the tier for Pieces? And Final Boss, you were saying that we actually can take a peek at Pieces getting it down nice and early, being the first guild in the world to tackle the Cabal.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just rolling through here real quick. If you guys want to keep up, of course, with all of the developments as everything transpires with the race to world first, head over to method.gg, go to the raid progress tab. That's what I'm scrolling through here real quick. And we can see how we only have 6 guilds. We're up to 6 guilds that have gotten past the Restless Cabal. But yeah, by all means,
Here's
we
my
can.
hack.
Oh,
this is my hack. This is what I do every world first race.
Okay.
I go over to Method's Twitter and I just put notifications on. It's actually it's so fun. You just get that little beep and then you instantly know what's going on and you don't miss anything. That's usually what I do. I've been doing that for a long time, and sometimes those beeps happened while I was asleep, like in Emerald Nightmare, and I completely missed it. But most of the time, you stay up to date because the boss doesn't instantly get destroyed by a Russian guild when you're not paying attention. This is definitely one of those cases.
That's what I did during my time at Blizzard is for every world first race I would have on notification was it Raider IO WoW progress method, and then anyone who was like of an officer or a GM of the guilds that were in, let's say the top 10, I had all of their notifications on, and so if I was in a meeting and my phone would go off, I'd be like, oh, so and so just killed that.
Yeah, I actually like Twitter notifications are low key one of the best things about Twitter. Like I started using them every now and then, and sometimes you absorb compliments that aren't meant for you. Like, and you think if you just don't swipe and actually look at them, you think that the compliment's for you. Like if you put Asmongold on notification and he tweets something out like "You're beautiful, baby." It might be for his girlfriend, but when you see it the first time, you're like, oh, I got a notification because Asmongold just told me I'm beautiful. I do that all the time. But you know what I've never done before? Gotten a world first kill on Cabal. Pieces, the only group of individuals that can say that, and we're going to get to take a look at it right now.
Yeah, we pulled up the video right here. Of course, we're not going to have any volume for it. They have open comms and whatnot, but we were allowed. We did get contact with Pieces to ask if we can actually put this on screen so we could watch it through and sort of see what differences that they did and the order of operations that they put through the relics. That was the biggest thing we were talking about yesterday. Rich, Mike, and I were sort of figuring out, like, why was the order set? That this was the order of the relics that would activate based on the encounter. But you can definitely see the comp we have here. A lot of white, purple, and blue for the DPS roles for sure. And I actually am curious. Yeah, looks like they did start it with the Trident first. I saw the little bubble of water there coming up.
Yeah, it's one of those things where basically if anybody doesn't know what is happening with Cabal, there's an element of choice. There are 3 different relics, and when you activate those relics, they each have an ability associated with them, and you have to go through all the relics in the fight. If you ever activate a relic more than once, the boss is going to get a buff called Power Overwhelming, which basically means they get 300% increased damage, and they kick you in the teeth. It's not something that you can really do. So you have to use all the relics. The main choice that you have is when you use them. And there was a huge question as to why that didn't seem to be a tuning knob. We never really saw the guilds switching up their relic order at all. We just saw going straight through with the same progression. And we've been kind of waiting to talk to some of the raiders about why that was the case. And I think maybe in a little bit here, maybe in a very short little bit, we might actually get to ask some of the raiders that question and bring that knowledge to you guys at home.
We'll have a little bit of a speculation and then VOD into actual knowledge sandwich going on here, because we do have one of the raiders for Method in the wings that we will poke when we get done with watching this, because I haven't actually watched this all the way through yet to figure out like what they did and what Pieces did specifically to do the rotations here. It does look, yeah, they double Trident first and then they're going Void. So it's still going to be Tempest Caller last. That was the same thing we were seeing with the other progressions yesterday. But
so I'm seeing in chat that the main difference with their attempt compared to some of the other guilds is the fact that the boss died. So that is something that we do need to keep our eyes on.
Rich, we have other guilds that have done this too. It's just the world first one, all right? Other people have figured out how to make the boss die, but...
6 or 5 other guilds have figured out a way to make the boss die.
Yep.
We got a decent amount of shamans here. I actually don't think that this is the most shaman stat group, but I think it's the most damage shamans that we had. I think it's the most Ellie shamans that we had. I think we had a few groups that were really taking advantage of that res totem, like quite a bit.
It looks like Pieces only use one. There's one resto shaman out of the 3. The other 2 blue bars up there are throwing lightning bolts, putting that sauce and the spaghetti and the meatballs. And the meatballs, yeah. I'm trying to watch. I wonder what the difference is with putting with the Trident first. You're going to get the stun orbs the entire encounter instead of doing it only halfway-ish through. But I guess it did make their phase 1, essentially, like if you're looking at 3 phases of the encounter, really simple looking. There wasn't anywhere near as much stress on probably the rotations of the Crushing Doubt debuff, which we talked about a lot yesterday. That is the debuff where you will be you'll be debuffed to run away from your raid group before the explosion happens. 2 people will be randomly, and the further you are away, the effect essentially falls off with range. And you want to make sure you are super far away. We saw it on the Shadow Priest POV when the video started. The further you are away, the less damage it does to your raid, because the raid is also juggling the Promise of Power, which is up to a 90% DPS increase, but at the cost of 90% of your health. So obviously you can see how that would be a problem to have any damage going off when you only have 30,000 HP.
Do you think that's one of the other things? Like, so we talk about how this fight is a perfect storm for Shadow Priests. Like, you look at pretty much every facet of the fight. Warlocks are obviously really strong, right? You can play Destro. You can actually get out Havoc. You're able to hit both of the bosses that don't have a shared health pool with your beefy boy Chaos Bolts. Also, you can do some decent things when we do see the Visage. You're able to snap pretty quickly as well when you do have to deal with other ads. You're mobile. There's a lot that goes the way of Warlocks as well. But when you look at Shadow Priest and just being able to keep up permanent Twist of Fate by multi-dotting the Visage, like, that's fantastic. That's a pretty big damage increase throughout the entirety of the fight. But do you think that with the debuff that's going out, well, it's a buff and a debuff, right? It's a double-edged sword. It's a little bit of give and take, which is pretty much the theme of this raid and even the rewards that you do get in it.
Right.
Do you think that having Vampiric Embrace becomes a bigger advantage there, or do you think that the debuff puts you in such a place that if you get hit, you're getting stitches?
There's an interesting amount of discussion about it's the Shadow Priest and Priest in general. It's also the Warlock. So Warlocks have a self-dispel, and obviously a Priest can dispel themselves as well. And the Discipline Priest, at least the Healing Priest orientated side of it, is that you have the Luminous Barrier. And this is a fight that is very, very, very much that you can brunt a lot of the damage incoming to keep Promise of Power up when it has low stacks due to when the overlap of abilities happen. So you don't lose people to the explosion. Obviously, when it's at 9 stacks, you have no HP. Luminous Barrier is not going to save you, but absorbs are a huge part of this. So it's definitely a fight that was catered in a weird way. I'm not going to allude to some awkward, Blizzard forced balancing because Shadow Priest was in a weird spot all expansion until more recently when they got some number tweaks and whatnot, and all of a sudden there's an encounter that's so good for them. But it is definitely how Mike said, it's definitely this encounter, but not Uu'nat, at least nowhere near to the same level. So we have our POV here running out with the Crushing Doubt to run away to let the damage fall off happen. And for some reason too, I'm seeing way less of the Trident orbs as I would have thought would be here if they started the Trident earlier. Because I've watched other POVs where there's so many more, but I guess if they have something under control, maybe they're clearing them a lot more aggressively too. With
I think they're clearing them way more because I've seen just like waves of them almost looking like they were just getting deleted. But when you actually do talk about immunities, it's like, how many immunities do they really have to clear? I think it would probably be the Paladins that are maybe doing it if they're trying to do it that way. But the floor is relatively clean for them. Even right now, this is usually an area where the floor gets really messy and you do have to invest a lot into movement. And they're able to move very easily without needing to worry about those orbs. And you can still see them spawning. Oh, that's how they're doing it. I think, are they? Oh, no, never mind. That didn't work. I thought that they did something really clever, and I don't think that works. I'll double check to see if it does first. But, one person who would probably know some of the ins and outs of it is one of our Shadow Priests now. Actually, wow, this is such a good tier for you. You can play everything now. You're the bestest boy ever. Cayna's joining the call right now. Cayna, Shamans are good. Shadow Priests are good. Therefore, you is good.
Oh, no. Well, it's actually kind of funny because Cayna does both. He's, Shaman or Shadow Priest main.
He said, I can't hear anything. Okay, really quick before Cayna can hear anything, let's make more Shadow Priest.
Yeah. Well, this finishes up here.
Yeah. We'll finish everything up and we'll figure out why you can't hear. But this is just such a early kill as well, guys. Like, this is early yesterday, and I think it really did surprise everyone. And there were kind of talks of the idea of like, wow, like if this kill didn't come in, would people have thought it was not mathematically possible to kill this boss with how it was tuned? Like, Pieces was the one that proved it.
No, I think Method was getting what before it was even killed, like 17% like attempts. So I don't think it would. I think that's way too close to start being like mathematically not doable.
Yeah, I think it was like Limit got it down nice and early really quickly, but that 30% area looked very hard. The 30% area just looked really unmanageable for a while. Cayna, is everything working nice for you right now?
Yeah, I think everything's good if you can hear me.
Yeah,
sir.
so
Yeah.
we have a lot of questions that we want to ask you. I think first off, just on a personal level, how's it feel to have a tier that was literally designed for you? Shamans are great.
It feels good, man. I've missed it.
They're great, and then Shadow Priests are great. How do you even
Shaman-
pick?
Boss damage did. Just
Yeah.
boss damage. Shaman blasts. It actually
Yeah,
it feels good. I don't know. It's nice to actually play the character I've like so much practice in compared to Shadow Priest, which is like a little bit more sometimes.
yeah. Shadow Priests definitely have their place in that fight, though, with how it is designed, and like you said, elemental shamans are able to just blast off. But what was it like for you progressing on that first boss? Like, let's actually start to talk about that because we haven't heard from any of the raiders so far. Was it a little bit panicky with all the other guilds getting it down so quick?
Not
That's so
really. I mean, we're kind of used to starting behind, like Battle of the Zaldor,
Mhm.
like Megatork World Third. Like, we're used to it, I guess. It's generally just like was a little bit annoying because I feel like the biggest issue that we had personally had on that boss was just people being greedy. Well, in general, just a greedy tactic. Like we min-maxed the debuff so much that it would have worked really well if the enrage was even harder. But at the end of the day, the tactic we killed it with was just, okay, 5 people take the debuff, and then we have Discipline Priests just to completely like manage that, and that made the fight just like completely easy.
So you didn't use all your DPS getting Promise of Power, is that what you're
No,
saying?
only at certain points. So basically, with Rapture and Luminous Barrier, you can, if there's just the people with the debuffs and there's just the Crushing Doubts coming in, the 2 explosions, Luminous Barrier and Rapture can keep those people alive, basically. So beforehand, we would run like 4 Disc Priests, and then we would have like them assigned to shield those groups and those groups. But it was just a lot, and at the end of the day, we just decided, okay, we just only take one group, and the rest of the people, they can soak the big circles that keep jumping about. You get a lot more space, there's like less worries, and we didn't really need the DPS, and I mean, we still never really engaged the enrage timer, so like, when you have the lightning, I literally set in Ghostpool for the entire lightning. In the last phase, the last 25%, I literally set more in Ghostpool than I actually was DPSing.
Pack Spirit is so insane.
Yeah,
We
I mean, there
can-
was no DPS, so I was just like, okay, I'll sit here, soak,
Yep.
be pretty.
We can watch. I have Cayna's POV of your defeat of the Restless Cabal, or we have the Cockpit's POV on Skype. Do you wanna narrate and we can talk about your perspective through
Yeah,
your
go for
POV, or do you want to use Skype's? You get to pick.
I mean, if I have to choose a PvP, I'll do mine, I guess.
Okay, that's true. You can walk us through what you did for this, because we just watched what Pieces did and their organization and what they chose for the relics. But yeah, walk us through what you were doing here when you guys got this.
Yeah, I want to start off by talking about relics as the VOD does come up.
Yep.
And we were talking about how so many of the guilds seemed very locked into the relic order that they were using, and they weren't even potentially trying to use that as a tuning knob and experimenting with it that much. What was it actually like for you guys when you decided which way you were going to use those relics?
I like it. It was a little bit different at the start of the tier. I can talk about it like after the actual fight, what our original plan was, because that was a spicy one.
Okay.
But basically this fight, so the first debuffs we all get, because, I mean, there's no reason not to. We Bloodlust here, everyone gets stacks, 3 stacks, we pop our CTs, and we just, like, we blast the boss. We start with the speaker. Actually, do we? I can't even remember. Yeah, I think we nuke this. No, we nuke, I don't even know actually which one we nuke anymore first.
Doing a bit
Yeah,
of both.
okay,
They're pretty even.
Yeah, okay, we do the speaker, I'm pretty sure. We nuke that one down first, because that means that we get that we have to kill, and obviously people still have the DPS buff, so we come out of it fresh. It's quite easy. This is where everyone has the first debuff still, and then around this time people start getting the dispels. You can see that my PvP about my health bar, the debuffs are now gone, and we just nuke down the shield and the ad. Quite simple, just cleave it all down. And you can see that in group 2, that was the debuff group, so those people, some of those still have the debuffs. Some people here get to restack it, but you generally get dispelled quite fast, because now we push Fatul, which means that we get the interrupt ads. The way how we did the interrupts is we have a massive node. Basically, the first one we goes through instantly. The other one we interrupt, I think, twice or 3 times, and the other one we do in a rotation of 4. We have a really nice V-car. You can see the number 3 over there. That's basically the interrupt, and there's a really good V-car to like that resets it. So now you can see again it's number 1, and that means it's the I to second. But like this fight for us is just like we play it super safe. Multi-dotting, the fit just comes up again, so we have to nuke that one down.
What made you guys change? Because historically, as you went in day 1, you were doing the Voidstone strat first. What made you decide to switch over to the Trident of the Deep Ocean?
I think the biggest issue that we had was mostly the dragon and the space, but like it's so difficult to say because our entire tactic originally was okay. So basically, our tactic at the start was we would run 4 discipline priests or 5. And we would have to debuff on everyone, which meant that we would have so much DPS that you would just constantly be pushing the phases, which means everything like the grip and resets the orb go away. But that obviously we ended up playing it a lot safer, which meant that we had less DPS. So we just had to kind of choose like what's more annoying, the orbs and what's more annoying basically, what's the orbs to pull in. We just had to choose between that. And
now I want to ask, just because I see a lot of people talking about it in chat, and after seeing elemental shamans perform like this, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are just trying to level up by any means necessary, trying to experience shaman in its current form. Maybe it becomes a little bit of the flavor of the month. For anybody who's looking to blast off to the moon and do that big elemental damage, what build are you actually running for the raid? I see people bringing up a bunch of different things, asking a bunch of different questions. So what are kind of your tips if somebody wants to jump on Elemental Shaman?
Well, if you do have any tips, I'd recommend to join this the General Shaman Discord, Earth Shrine. There's a lot of MVPs and people in there, extremely good all of the specs. Like Earth Shrine, I think, is one of the best class Discords out there. So if you have any actual questions, get in there.
There you go.
For the rest, you want 3 times Igneous Potential, which increases your lava burst damage. Basically, whenever you dot, you can get Surge procs, which is basically free lava burst instant cast. A lot of damage, so really good on cleave, but also good on single targets. And then this tier specifically, you run a lot of lava shocks, which is whenever flame shock does damage, you get more earth shock. So basically, you dotting ads just gives you massive boss damage, and you just destroy bosses. And that's kind of the build you run right now. The main reason I played my shaman here instead of my shadow priest is because we were doing interrupts, and it was just safer with interrupts, so you can back up easier. And the general shaman is quite safe as well. Although shadow priest can shield itself, shadow priest isn't that insane if you can't min-max the debuffs, and since we only decided to take 5 people with the debuffs, there was really not too much reason.
How did you decide on which DPS were your ones holding the promise of power?
Shadow priests, because shadow priests are OP. They do superb cleave damage. It's actually ridiculous. And then we just took the 2 main warlocks. I think it was Deep Shades and Zero, because they're the main warlocks, so we expect them to kind of perform the best, you know.
I did see Scripe there with a little bit of promise of power going on, so he's still
yeah.
got
I
his,
mean, you get the Herald, and sometimes you just nip in. You get like I have 3 stacks right now as well, because there's nothing really happening. Echo
Right.
comes up, but this is about the point that we start getting the lightning soon. Here you can see some kind of spicy dodging. So.
Also, for anybody just coming into chat, because I do see some people a little bit curious.
And here you see my here you see my point of view jumping about my ghost wolf.
Yep.
Stacking up the spirit wolf.
Yeah.
That trait, man, it does a lot of healing.
It's also the talent. You get a permanent 20% damage reduction inside of there, and since when you get hit by the storm, you deal 50% less damage. I literally just decided, okay, I do my interrupt and I sit in ghost wolf.
Yep.
Here you can see me DPS a little bit. Probably soon going back into Ghost Wolf. Yep, there we go. Give them a speed totem over there because I see a bunch stacked. Here I had to actually I don't think that was me.
You didn't do as much clearing of the tide orbs either. Is that just a strat decision? You didn't have to worry about them, or
we kind of didn't have a lot of immunities.
Oh,
we only had, I think most guilds spent more. We only had 1 paladin, holy paladin. This ad specifically we used Tremor on because it was too difficult to kill.
Yeah, I saw pieces in the video. They had 2 paladins, but I didn't really see much else in the way of immunities. That was what I was actually looking for, because they were clearing like crazy. Like they were putting a lot of focus on actually clearing the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would be better. If you could clear more, it would be a lot better. Because honestly, quite a lot of the deaths and early wipes and stuff generally were to people getting stunned, dying, lacking the guy, lacking the healer. This is, I think, is do people? Yeah. Okay. So right now we're literally just like, okay, kill boss. So people will get more aggressive. They take more stacks. You can see how many orbs there are. It's actually just a full clown fiesta of dodging. We try to do as much damage right now, and the thing is, we never really got this far. We didn't even have things assigned. Like we didn't like the soaking was complete YOLO. At some point, you'll probably see me sit in Ghost Wolf just next to one. Just sitting like, okay, I guess I'll soak it. Hopefully, they kill the boss. It was actually just a full fiesta at the end.
Yeah, I feel like that was the boss. Like when you watch progression, pretty much all of the attempts, there was like, oh, a tank went down again, and they're cutting it around the room, full fiesta style. It looks like
the
it may be a
original
kill.
Tactic that we had was obviously running the 4 discipline priests, shielding everything, pushing the boss really fast. And then we would save loss because we had so many debuffs. We didn't need loss at the start. The main reason people lost at the start is for the berserk timer, right? You get the most DPS there, everyone has debuffs, nothing happening, you get to push the timer. Our tactic was we would never take the lightning. We would let the both bosses get 300% damage increase. Scribe would race car Ferrari motorcycle kite it with an arcane mage. This is not a joke. We have had tries where he literally kited the boss for like almost a minute. He would just like blink about, the boss would cast, he would get a teleport, then he would get feathers, then grips, and then blink again, and the boss would cast. Like, and then we would have 2 monks tank the other boss with 300%. At 25%, blood lost, everyone with 9 stacks lost, nuke the boss, kill it in 20 seconds.
You didn't look that excited. You were just like, there it is.
When you're at that point of the fight, that far in World 4, you kind of just like, well, finally, we did it.
Yeah, it's like we did the work that we needed to do.
Yeah.
Let's keep on moving. Let's get on over to Uu'nat. But wait, so how quickly did you guys decide not to go for the really flashy potential kill of exploding it in like 20 seconds and having an arcane?
Oh yeah, back up.
After a lot of time. So the progress started with the priest tactic mostly, but it was bugged. They had to hotfix something. So basically, the crossing doubts, it's 2 different damage events happening at the exact same time, which meant that the absorbs would fully absorb the first crossing doubt, but then because they happen at the same time, it wouldn't register, and the second damage crossing doubts would go through the shields, and that would just one-shot everyone. So the only time you would actually live it is if you had a troll, because the footer shuffle, just like on Cayna, reduces the cooldown, and then it would be 0.3 seconds or something apart, and it would register. So they hotfixed it to have the 2 crossing doubts always be 0.3 seconds apart.
That's so funny that troll. It's like troll OP like twice in a row. Oh man.
Well, I mean, obviously, even if you have 50% trolls, you would just gamble, because if you had 2 crossing doubts, you would instantly have to dispel everyone, and it was just a mess. It wasn't really viable.
So that was something that Final Boss actually did bring up yesterday, because we were hearing some stuff about it, but we weren't like 100% sure what everything was going to be. But man, that's pretty nutty. I love that strategy as well. That would have been really cool to see it. I hope you guys actually, like, when you do finish clearing the raid, I want to see you guys kill it that way. Like that's just a cool thing to watch. Is it stressful to go for strats like that?
Well, stressful, I guess, is mostly for Scribe, since he has to do the raid leading and kite that thing at the same time. I think it was a fun tactic. It could have maybe worked, but at the end of the day, it was probably not viable enough. And we should have just taken a safer tactic and killed it in a couple of hours. But
how do you feel about Uu'nat?
Uu'nat is fun. It's hectic, it's stressful, it's difficult, it's probably a little bit almost overtuned. But it's really fun. I enjoyed. I think we're at like 160 wipes right now in day 1, and I like it a lot more than Cayna.
Ooh,
it looked like it was a ton of fun. Like I was flying today, and so the second I was like in the airport, like looking up the video already. I was like, this looks so cool. I think it just looks so much fun.
There is so many different tactics you can do, and choices you can make, and comps you can run, and how much we actually have to min-max phase 1, because we're trying to push it before the, what is it, 4 or something set of marks that come in. While you're having to like dodge everything, and how you can use all the artifacts, and it's fun. It's really, really fun. It's fast paced. Like, I think the tries are generally like around 4 minutes already, and it literally feels like 2-minute attempts mostly. I mean, a lot of attempts are quite short because we blow up instantly, but...
So where are most of the guilds sitting right now as far as progression does go for the boss? I know you guys are around 60% right now. Is there anybody who's like withholding information right now that isn't streaming?
I mean, Pieces is not streaming. We have no clue how far they are. They have a probably really good comp. I mean, they're running 5 Valley Shamans. So I think they're progressing pretty well.
Wait,
and then,
5 Ellies, you said?
Caden just can't handle it.
How did this happen? Like, what is going on?
You know what happened?
No shaman representations for maybe like 1 resto shaman. Then all of a sudden you have like 5 Ellie shamans being stacked. It's like, what the fuck is this tier?
It's after the hotfix, because obviously they buffed the Ignis potential trade right at Mythic of Battle of the Zalor. And then obviously during that progress, no one really knew how good it would be.
Yeah.
And obviously the trades you couldn't get from the raid, so slowly but surely people started to figure out, wait, you actually get a lot of boss damage. And if you now look at Mega Torque logs, every single like rank 1 is Ellie Shaman, just doing like 27k when other classes are like struggling to the 25. I mean, even during our pulls,
In
like...
chat, I see we're using 5 shamans. Nobody said they're elemental. Oh!
I'm just upset because the hero of Ret Paladins is Narcoles.
Okay.
And he's playing Locke. He's playing Locke.
When you have Clicks, who I know is like a top tier Ellie Shaman, like I fucking love that guy. When you have Clicks saying I'm playing Enhancement, you know that they're running 5 Ellie Shamans, yeah. That's like the child with like the face full of like chocolate saying like, nah, I didn't eat the chocolate.
Yeah, of course not. You know, I was gonna say, Caden, you know what Shaman did to get to this point? Hotfix aside, we went as
suffered a lot. That's what you did.
Suffered for many expansions in a row to have this one little moment right now, at least with 2 bosses.
One little moment. Who knows how long it could be? How long the day in the sun can be?
Well, we'll get into.
Didn't live under the focus of like Ghostcrawler, thinking he was going to nerf you any damn day.
Well,
I honestly
I'm really
like
surprised. I actually expected when the Shadowpiece nerfs came out, I was like refreshing, like Shaman nerf, Shaman nerf, Shaman nerf.
Yep.
I'm actually really happy that I switched to a Shaman main before any of this happened. So I called it. I started switching right after London, man. I felt it coming. I felt the great tidal wave of Shaman prowess on the way.
Yeah.
But I think when we do look forward to one of the questions I do want to ask, because I saw so many people talking about it yesterday, when we get now to the final boss in Crucible of the Storms, is melee more viable? I know obviously right now when we're talking about how strong these other classes are, it makes melee not feel viable. But
just on Mythic alone, I don't see how just knowing that 10-yard, I can't remember the name of the ability, the 10-yard range for detonation. I was like, that's got to be such a DPS killer. Like I can't imagine a melee having a good time.
That is much the DPS killer. Because right now you obviously have the pool spawning, right? Like the big red pools you can't so because it will heal the boss. You can't put us in the middle.
Yeah.
So and with all the marks, it's really difficult to be stacked and have the boss on top of you because you just can't see shit. So kind of what we started doing is literally our Demon Hunter is hitting the boss, base Weakara pops up, gets to the edge, cries for 5 seconds, lies back, Weakara pops up, let's go back.
Cries and Metamorphosis.
Cries and Metamorphosis it.
Just put up the debuff and then go make a Hot Pocket, man. That's all you need to do as a Demon Hunter right now.
I don't know. And I mean, there's also the multi-dotting, right? And then the ads aren't that important, so you can have Affliction Warlocks and you can have Elemental Shamans dotting them for a single target. Like, I'm not sure what the original plan was with this boss, but if you wanted to design a melee-friendly boss, this is not your design.
Yeah,
this is not what you should be looking at.
It's unfortunate because it's such a cool fight, and it feels like it's so well done. But as a melee, I'm just like, I hate you, whoever made this, because I know I'm not going to get to have a lot of fun.
It's even that, but like you could probably game around it, right? But it's not even worth it because the top 4 single target specs are literally Shadow Priest, Warlock, Ellie Shaman, and Moonkin. So why would you run a weaker DPS and make a difficult tactic around it?
You were talking about you were talking about the unstable resonance being that's the new
Yeah.
like Star Augur type mechanic. That's what we
Yeah, it's a bit different than Star Augur, because on Star
Sure.
Augur you would get people with purple, they had to go together. Right now you have the people with the 3 artifacts go clear everything. I don't know how other guilds do it, but we do it pretty special, and I really like the way how we do it right now with Scribe being like a cleaner, or however you want to call it. Our current tactic, I think, is actually quite good, and we're just slowly improving it. And I think hopefully tomorrow we get to see some phase 3 pools and start seeing how to kill this bossy.
Is it? Oh, I was gonna say, is it really super important to drop the Oblivion tiers
Yes.
not near the boss at all? Are you just trying to never
Yes.
ever clean them up the whole fight? Is that what
Because
you're looking at?
the circle gets closer and closer. So
Right.
if you drop something in the middle at almost the end of the phase, the circle is too close to effectively dodge the 2 beams that come in that give you the debuff, so we have to use the tank puddle. And at that point you just have like half the room is just completely full of range characters, and there's like all the range you kind of don't want. How do you say? It's really difficult to say. You kind of need a thought for it to actually properly explain it. But yeah, it's rough.
I'm curious if anyone knows this. Can you actually blink through the beams and not take the dot?
Yes. This is
Oh,
the
that's
reason we have
cool.
this many warlocks.
Yeah.
I think we just got a FOD link, so we might be able to watch it together. We literally just have like a little airplane icon on the other side of the room for all the warlocks, because the beams on heroic they're kind of random, but on mythic it's set, so we know where to place the portals to not get any stacks. So we just have
Okay.
like all the warlocks not take anything, and then like the shadow priest, the shamans, and the non-blinky people they just take us the.
Can you gateway through, or is it worth gatewaying through it to actually avoid that?
It's not
'Cause
it's not the gateway, it's the personal portal.
Oh, okay. So gateway
But
doesn't work, but personal does.
There
Okay.
is a
Yeah,
bit of
interesting.
a thing right now with the boss where you can't use things like blink during the marks, because normally how you would think is like, oh, I can just blink over the guy with a different mark, right? Nothing will happen. No, you will explode.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's amazing. We probably took about 10 pools to test every single mobility spell in the game, and we were just like, okay.
Yeah, it was like it's warlock. The warlock teleportal does mage blink. The monk transcendence.
Yeah,
There's a couple of different
nothing.
things.
Yeah, I was watching one attempt and I saw Sko like transcendence through it. I was like, oh, that's neat. That's like that's
Yeah.
really cool.
It feels like well, I mean, the tanks don't get the thing, so they can't blow anything up.
Yeah.
But it feels a little bit buggy sometimes, because sometimes you blink and nothing happens, and sometimes you blink and something happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how does it exactly work? You don't really want to figure out, because then you're just farming wipes either. But
How consistent are those abilities throughout boss fights? Like when you look at something,
often,
yeah,
often.
yeah.
I think I don't know the exact timers. I think the bait comes in close to every 20 seconds or something. I literally don't know how to mad. I'm super tired as well. So
I'm
the baiting comes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna
I
bring
think
up.
we bait about 4 times in phase 1.
I wanted you to, because on the tired thing. That's what I was trying to let everyone else know, that we gotta let you get out of here. But we've got about 4 minutes of your 60-ish%
The best pool.
pull so far. It's unfortunate it's from Josh's POV, but hey, if
No,
you wanna,
that's fine.
if you wanna sort of walk.
Is that
us
the guy
through-
that used to be in pieces?
Oh,
Yeah.
That guy.
They-
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Apparently, after Peters got rolled first, he got a lot of whispers.
Oh man, I wish I could have
mean,
seen his face when that
You know,
happened.
Pieces was rolled 10th, then he joined us. Now Pieces kind of rolled first. I think Josh is just the best bad luck charm, really.
Yikes.
So here we see basically the pool. So we have him yelling "Void is here," which is basically all the purple with the Void thing have to come to him. You can see Scribe on the left. So basically, the tanks are always Moon. Josh is always purple. Here you can see his beta things. The only difference that we really do is we always run to purple and Moon, but Scribe will run to us. So we have basically all the Moons run first, then the purple people will gather, and the storm people, they kind of just make like 2 small groups, and then at the end, Scribe will just like blink on top of you and snatch it all.
This fight was actually
Yep.
it was just hotfix buffed the other day, where you only have 12 seconds to clean.
Yeah.
You had 15 originally. So
Here again, you're gonna see how often this happens. You can see Scribe there on the bottom, just running to the people. this is actually misbait. It's kind of yikes. It's hectic, honestly, this fight. Room gets smaller and smaller. People soak this. If the ads slowly spawning, we're 3 healing this as well right now. We're only running 3 healers.
Ooh.
Again, baiting all the things together, like the red circles. You can see on Cross all the demonic portals. That's where the warlocks teleport to. It's like a small airplane, if you look at the icons. And right now we're just like full spreading. I think we have, I don't know where Josh has his regards actually. Don't know when the next marks come in. I think the next marks are coming soon though. Yeah,
They're right
here.
Yeah, you're a little bit behind if you're watching on the live stream, just so
Okay.
viewers know. Yeah, but I do see the airplane.
Yeah. So again, we're just like getting pushed closer and closer. The fight honestly kind of feels like Blackhand in the sense where it's so hectic. We're like 3 minutes into the fight and it feels like we've been there for like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So this is the beams that we can't really do much with. So here we have the tank bubble. You can see it on the right. We're taking the second ticks. We run into it to obviously deplete it. And we're just nuking the boss right now because a couple seconds after this, we would get the next set of marks. The video actually kind of started early. He didn't really see the full pool. But here we get all the ads low, so we can kill him with the DPS thing. And we have everyone just running out. Here we have Josh pop it and running into the darkness, so he depleted a lot faster. We took all the things, and we go again. Now this is like kind of the first pull that we actually get a little bit further into the phase, so we don't really know exactly what to do. Or, well, we kind of know what to do, but obviously we need to execute it, and it's going to be the first time seeing it. We have an interpretation for all the ads. And we're just nuking the boss really. We're not really killing the ads, we're mostly just dotting them up, taking calm, and we just have an interpretation that should, in theory, work for every single interrupt. Here we get the marks, and the big issue with these marks is that some of the artifacts might be on the ground still. So we just have to run, and you can see here, like this is the entire stack, like you see all the things, and then Scrapling's in. Unfortunately, we all die, because I think it was just a little bit too late. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know if I can't really back up too easily here with the overall VOD, but is that why it happened? You got, I'll back up right here to the start of the phase, essentially.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why Just tracking all the things. Well, it's obviously I'm quite used to my own UI, so it's a bit more difficult to notice. So we get this, and after this we get the mark soon. Pretty sure, at least.
Can you comment on what you guys thought when you saw Uu'nat's HP? Because
help.
Because he has like 87-ish million in 20-man heroic, and then you take the same people into mythic, and he has it's like 217 or something. Oh, there's the death.
So here you have all the people just completely stacked. Yeah, okay. So Scribe, it was just a little bit too late. Unlucky, but yeah, this is kind of what we do. So we have purple people run to purple, moon people run to the trident, and then the yellow people, they stack, and we just hope that Scribe plays the game good and helps us out, which happens 99% of the time. But this boss has a lot of HP. That last phase is going to be scary. I'm not sure how we're going to do it.
So I want to talk about the competition as a whole. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about just with the boss. But let's talk about pieces just a little bit more. When we were actually talking about pieces as a guild, when we were in London, when we were doing the race for Battle of Dazzle-Lador, we talked about how this was serious competition. We knew that it was serious competition, but you guys don't have to think about them as much because they don't have as much time to raid as you guys typically do. This time around, when we expect the raid to be a little bit shorter, do you think that they are really in the running to be the #1 guild potentially to take down Uu'nat?
I think a tier like this, I mean, they definitely can, because I think the big thing from pieces to like method is they don't have as high requirements generally, like alt requirements and stuff. So generally on the normal tier, we would be able to split more, get more gear. I think for general tiers, we're also a bit more prepared. But this tier, pieces is blasting, they nailed comps, they had good tactics, they're playing super, super well. It also is that we can't, at some point, we also have people that go back to work, right? Like, we can't take off 4 weeks for this tier either. We know that limit obviously isn't day rating either anymore. So in some ways, it's like a little bit less serious of a tier. But I mean, I'm happy that they're competing, that they're going ham. I hope they do this for every tier, because the more competition, the more fun the race gets.
Yeah, I think last question, and then we need to let you get to sleep and get ready for the next day of progression. How do you feel about people dating Josh?
There's so many of them. Like we put this also on Josh, and then after every wipe, we're just like, "Can you take it? Can you rest us?" And he's like, "Sorry," sending some snaps, like DMing people back. Like, there's so many of them. I don't know if it's unique anymore. I don't get why they do it, because you're just not unique anymore. I don't know. I would just go for deep shit at this point. He's desperate for one.
Wait. Did you are you talking about soul stoning, Josh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the biggest mistake ever. We started doing it on Potter now.
I was talking about. Never mind. We'll talk to you soon. Come back on. Come back on one of these days after you get some sleep. After maybe you get a world first kill under your belt against Uu'nat. Awesome. Yeah, dude. It's nice to get to talk to you. I wish we were in London actually getting to hang out. But good luck with everything in the race.
That would have been great.
Yeah, especially if it was. It would have been really insane if we went to London and it got killed in one day, and then we were just in London. Right?
Been in London. Yeah.
I wouldn't have mind. Oh god, sitting in London, what an annoying circumstances actually.
It's so funny when people ask questions about like, who are you cheering for in the world first race when you guys are commentating from London. It's like, whoever gets me to dinner first tonight.
Wow.
Like, that's gotta
so your loyalties lie, Rich.
I see how it is, Rich. I see how it is, dude.
No, but honestly, good luck, man. Good luck with everything. Where can everybody who's just coming in right now, before you do go to bed, where can they follow you if they want to make sure that they're staying up to date with all of that blasty boy damage with the elemental shaman and all that shadow priest prowess? There we go.
There you go.
I have a really original Twitch name. It's basically my username, twitch.tv/Cayna. That's it.
There we go.
I'm in there.
Do you have?
There we go.
Are you fully stocked up with yogurt for this progression tier?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
I didn't have any yesterday, but today I opened the fridge and there were 2 bottles in there, so I'm like,
all right.
I'm good.
All right, get out of here. We gotta let you get out of here.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Later, man.
I want to also make sure that if you missed yesterday's stream of the Crucible Store's post show here on twitch.tv/method, the whole VOD is up. And of course, over on Method's YouTube channel, you can go check that out. Link is also right there, bloop, on their Twitter. If you missed the show yesterday, was myself, Rich, Nobble, and this guy named Preach, who just got out of Blizzard jail. So you can go talk about, or listen to us talk about the show yesterday from the initial impressions.
Yeah, guys, just one favor. If you do check out that VOD from the day one show, that you can go to Twitter right now, click that link and watch it, be sure to mute it at 5 minutes and 7 seconds, because we accidentally reveal a huge secret that's coming up in WoW, and we don't want to spoil that for you. It's like a huge secret. It was only leaked on that show. It's like a big mistake. So at 5 minutes and 7 seconds, be sure to mute for a little while so you don't hear that secret. We shouldn't have said it. It's still in the VOD. It was a huge oopsie doopsie. So check out that VOD, but do not watch after 5 minutes and 7 seconds when we reveal something that we shouldn't have revealed. Now, moving forward with everything, we have Cabal in the rear view mirror for 6 guilds in the world. Now, Uu'nat going to be a huge hurdle to jump over. 60% is the best attempt that we do have from Method. We got to talk a little bit to Cayna. We're hearing these strategies come together. Who do we think? I was going to make Preach do this yesterday when he was on with us, Final Boss. I want to make a prediction right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you guys think is going to be able to take it? Like, do you think that Pieces is able to take down this whole tier? Or do you think Method's going to be able to catch up a whole bunch now that they've really gotten their feet wet? Who do you guys think is going to win?
This is not as much of a debate as what you just said. I'm more interested in what Caden sees from like the outside in. Right, because I follow this internally, and I have the streams on. And I sort of watch stuff like during my stream, and then after, before I go to bed, when I wake up. And I always had the same back and forth when I was in London. I had to keep up with when I wasn't casting and when I was. So when I came into a shift, I wasn't like, what's going on? But from a completely outside spectator point of view, when you've seen Method take so many world firsts historically from tier to tier to tier to tier, with a few here and there being sparsed out to other guilds. But Caden, you had your time at Blizzard and now your time outside of it. What do you see from a spectator point? How is it different for you?
I guess for me, I kind of I love seeing more guilds get into the race, and I think once you see a guild finally have like a real good finish, you start to see more participation from that guild for a lot longer. So me, I want to see Method get beaten just because it's healthy for the community and healthy for the race itself. But me having friends in Method now, I'm kind of like, oh, I want to see my friends win. But at the same time, it's like, oh no, it's good for them to lose because then it's more competition in the long run. So I'm kind of I'm kind of saying that I'm rooting for pieces. Seeing pieces consistently kind of be there for a while in the past couple of tiers. I want to see them be able to come up and beat Josh. I mean Method.
See, that is just such
Payment
a good storyline. That is such a good storyline if Pieces just is able to come in and beat Josh. I just can't even like what the smack talk would be back and forth. I saw a question in chat though that I cannot answer right now, but I see some people from Limit who are in the chat right now that I trust that maybe will potentially answer this. People were asking whether Limit was not going to be day rating anymore. So one of the things that is unique with this tier is even some of the guilds that we do see increasing their hours typically for World First Race may not be able to because it's this intermediary tier. It's not necessarily even viewed as its own tier. It's this breakout raid in between BOD and 8.2. So we're not sure if all the guilds are going to be able to put in the same time commitment as they typically do. So is that the case? Is Limit actually going to not be day rating? Yeah, that's who I'm trusting, guys. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, I think I want to say that that Max was talking about only doing like regular raid nights. Like they were kind of approaching it like super, not casual, but kind of as their normal raid days apart from, I mean, just because you've got like the MDI going on at the same time, which is unfortunate timing. You kind of can't, they don't have a lot to really throw at it. And there's not really a lot of reason to. I kind of totally see that, given that it's only 2 bosses. I mean, this is just judging from just what I've seen outside looking in.
So THD coming in with we shouldn't be raiding until Sunday or Monday. I'm pretty sure is our plan with a normal schedule. It's strange too because you're talking about. I wanted to sort of go on the Method losing in this race. It's strange because it's 2 bosses, but these both bosses, as we've seen with Restless Cabal at least first, and how Cayna talked about Uu'nat, are almost like so. Method got world first on Cayna one time. But can they do it 2 more times with the 2 more bosses that are sort of added on to this 0.5 of a tier? Because these are not sort of the first 3 or 4 or 5, 6 sometimes bosses in a full-fledged raid. We have 8 coming up with the Eternal Palace. And if Pieces can show up and take the Restless Cabal and potentially be ahead of Method right now with Uu'nat, I wonder if that changes how their mentality shifts. They can do these really difficult bosses and where they move forward to compete when the next full raid comes out. Because we always know the first half of the raid usually goes down just like that when the raid opens normally, because those bosses are nowhere near as difficult as the later half.
So here's the thing. This is the first thing that pops into my mind. I think Pieces most likely is a guild, and I don't know a lot of people in Pieces very well. So this is just me from the outside looking in and trying to kind of deduce some things. I look at a guild like Pieces, and I'm pretty sure that there's like, it's obvious that they know that they can compete, right? Like they know that they can compete in these races. But there's always a culture in any guild, even if it is a very hardcore guild, even if it is a top 10 guild, there's always going to be that unique culture to the guild. And having a giant culture shift is not something that happens just based off of success, right? And you can even see that with the ideas of streaming different raids, right? And what's the goal? What is the culture inside of a guild? Is this a guild that wants to be streaming? Is this a guild that doesn't want to be streaming? Is this a guild that wants to go for these long hours? So I feel like that's one of those questions where it's like, as much as they can prove it, I think it's such a big culture shock for a guild to instantly say, hey, now you need to take all of your vacation days and dedicate it to progressing. That's a big commitment. It's such a big commitment. It's a big portion of your life. I would love to see Pieces do it. They're always that dark horse right now. I would love to see them shake stuff up, but who knows? Who really knows? I think this is the tier though. If I'm pieces, this is when I would take Holiday. I would be like, yeah, let's blast off. Let's take Crucible of the Storms.
We'll have to see. Again, we don't know where they're at internally. And we can get told, like, pieces at 38%, or whatever, right? How do we know? Right? Unless it's some internal credible thumbs up or, like, an official tweet showing, here we go. This is where we're at. Like it's a Both health frame kind of thing that comes out normally when people get closer, sort of drumming up the hype and the controversy, potentially. It's photoshopped. It's not Photos. It's real. So we'll have to wait and see if any of that stuff starts coming out there. And again, it's these 2 bosses, but it's almost like a penultimate and an end boss back to back with none of like the trash tier weaker bosses before it. So we just skipped all that stuff and we're right here at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, people talking about like whether or not pieces is about streaming. Like also, you don't need to stream to be involved in the race. That's honestly, it's
this
funny.
Is a new thing. Like it's still really, really new.
Like back in my day, nobody streamed, right? I think one of the things to note as well, as somebody who is viewing the race, it's kind of fun when somebody isn't streaming, when like the one guild isn't streaming and you're just like, wait, what are they doing? We have no idea. Like it was even fun with Limit in BOD. Like you go back to BOD, we have no idea what they're doing half the time, and it's just so many different rumors. Then we see Method get to a boss and we're like, wait, this doesn't line up with what we heard. It is very interesting to have that dynamic. But when we look at Crucible of Storms, I think once again, this is a dynamic that we're not used to. Because one of the biggest factors in the races that is always talked about, this is even one of the reasons people say Limit potentially didn't win a tier, is whether or not you're hitting resets. When you actually get into a reset, you're getting more gear. Gear is not the issue with Crucible of Storms. This is not going to be something that these players can get much more gear to deal with. So I think that changes the entire race, Bay.
Now, there's some, right? Obviously, the gear does go up by 5 levels per boss, right? So Uu'nat, doesn't matter what gear he drops, because once he drops it, you're already on farm. You already got the placement. You can get a little bit after a reset with the 420 gear you can get from Restless Cabal. But that's the one weird part about it.
420? Yeah, 420. That is some high item level. That is something that we do need to think about. But I don't think it necessarily, as high as that is, I don't think that it really does change the dynamic of the race.
Right.
Oh, yeah, especially in guilds and like raid teams of this caliber. Like, they're already maximizing all of their loot potential. Majority of them are probably already going to have most of their pieces either are at that eye level or already better. So it's such a smaller impact.
I'm going to check. I actually don't know. We did this a lot when we were watching the Battle of the Zaralor race. So eye level, let me double check actually what pieces had on the world first. 415.92. Their overall guild eye level is 418.45. But again, if the boss drops 420 eye level and you're within 5 eye levels of the boss, normally things are balanced around 15 or lower. Roughly, we know that Jaina was not. Jaina was definitely closer to the get almost to her eye level, right? To get to that 415, but there's no way you can get like a reset if we're still on Uu'nat after next Tuesday, Wednesday. There isn't like a huge power jump that anyone's gonna have. Maybe a lucky piece of Azeroth, your Mythic Plus box, maybe a lucky trinket, something like that. Even though all the casters are running the trinket from BOD anyway right now, I'm not sure they can get much better. So then all this comes down to this.
There's not going to be that dynamic, right? There's not going to be that dynamic of we're taking time to reset. We're going to be doing this. There isn't that elephant in the room, and there also isn't that that moment where we already see a lot of the NA versus EU advantage going to the wayside. Like that is something that exists even further into the raid. Is it still a factor? Yes, you can obviously say that it's still a factor. NA getting that head start, but when you look at the resets coming in, NA is actually getting gear before EU's getting gear. So it's kind of a constant throughout every single week. You know, you get to that second week and you're like, okay, NA's just going to go for a full re-clear. Now they're going to jump ahead in gear, and then they're going to be doing their boss pulls again. EU going to be lagging behind. Now it's just attempt after attempt after attempt. Like they're not going to re-clear the first boss. There's no reason to go back and do Cabal again for the most part, unless you're really doing something weird that we don't expect.
It's a 9-minute slugfest. Not like you can go back, but let's get a quick re-clear back to it. Yeah. But no, it's a 9-minute encounter that isn't really going to get easier until Ajara's Eternal Palace opens up in 2 months or whatever. So there's no curve that you can get ahead of, where we were seeing the curve when Jaina was, with all the auction house and the Mythic Plus runs and all the little bits and pieces they could buy for BOEs and bring in any infusion of eye level. There's none of that right now. So outside of the really rare piece they might get running Mythic Plus over the off time, if anyone else is doing that, if they're gearing any other characters up, they want to change their roster because that Uu'nat isn't the same as Cabal. Yeah, it's strange to look at that. That's just something that's totally out of the window now. Now it's all just, it's strat, it's order, it's how you deal with the combination of abilities, and it is just skill ceiling, skill floor between the players, the comps, the guilds overall, which is a little bit different because usually we always see the whole progression through 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 bosses. Now it's just, here's 2 end bosses, have fun.
It's basically
nice.
a tier with no external factors.
Yeah.
Straight up. What do you have already geared up? It's too late to already gear anything else up, so you literally just have what you have.
Yep.
Now, obviously, we can't have there's a level of stuff that you can say and stuff you can't say, right, Caden? But in your opinion, like, how difficult would it be to have tiers like this? Because I know the rumor going around right now, and not necessarily confirmed, but a lot of people were like, yeah, like there was one guy who was basically in charge of this raid, that was in charge of Crucible Storms, and he did the encounter design there, while there was another team working on Battle of Dazazul, and both of these raids are fantastic, and they both feel very different. I think I've commended Crucible of the Storms a huge amount for being very thematic in the way that the 2 bosses, their mechanics feel like they come from the same raid, and also the rewards feel like they are warranted based off of what you're going through in that fight. Do you think that this is a dynamic that we may see in the future? Do you think that there could be 2 breakout teams that are working separately to release in the same tier raids that feel like this, a big raid and then a mini raid that progresses story, challenges these top end guilds, and creates 2 different types of races?
I would love to see it again, because I think earlier on we talked about how it's kind of a similar feel of a Ruby Sanctum, but there being another tier after Ruby Sanctum rather than the end of the expansion. I would love to see this kind of thing happen again. I don't think the encounter team functions that way from what I recall. I might be wrong now and they did it for this, but I don't think they function in different breakout teams to where there's like one team working on one tier and one another. I think everybody works on everything. And it's kind of like a group design effort, is I believe how it works. And I might be wrong. That's just what I've gathered from things that they've talked about in the designing a boss panel that we saw our lovely friend Sloopbag on a while back at BlizzCon. And but I would just it's an interesting thing to just have a tier, not be. It's literally just focused on a team's ability to, here's your problems, how are you solving the problems, and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and not having to worry about things like gear, all the crazy auction house nonsense. Like it's a very refined feel of what the world first race is. Not to mention that it does a really good job of being a story gap between big beats that we're going to see between 8-1, 8-15, and then 8-2 later on.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that we can keep track of, and the resources therein to sort of figure out how a tier to mid tier to then a brand new one might work. But I think a lot of that comes from a little website, and we can bring up our next guest to talk about said website. Because over here, I don't know if you know of this website called Wowhead. Anyone know about Wowhead? Caden, do you know what Wowhead is? Are you sure you know what this is?
I don't think so. Isn't it like a little it's like a brand new website? They're like just started getting a couple of things up.
It does everything. Spend your time there. I know I do. It doesn't matter. You want to actually learning the different mechanics that you need to know to beat the bosses in Crucible of the Storm, or if you want to get a little bit better at your classes, or check up on all the WoW news, or take any character model that you want to blow kisses at you in that dressing room, which I actually learned that we can do yesterday. Yeah. I did not know that you could use the dressing room to emote until yesterday with the Naifu Waifu, but you can do just about everything over here, guys. If you've never checked it out before, I do highly recommend it. There's us. So if you're ever just like curious about which WoW content is floating around as well, like you can go over there and they're going to have live embeds and different things like that. So it really is the hub for everything World of Warcraft. Let's talk though to Perk from Wowhead and get some insight into things in 8.2. One of the other things that's fantastic about Wowhead is you can actually look into the future quite a few times. And right now we're seeing some stuff about 8.2 on the site that's very exciting. Some stuff that might be going against some gearing trends that we've seen over the past couple of years, some stuff that's going to be changing different things like the Heart of Azeroth. 8.2 Crucible of the Storms kind of leads up to 8.2 in an interesting way. And to talk about that, we have Perk here. Perk, how's 8.2 looking? We'll talk about some of the stuff that you have on the site, but are you excited for 8.2 now?
Yes, I'm very excited for 8.2, especially after, some of the issues we've had in other earlier parts of BFA, but 8.2 has been a blast. The data mining started right after my birthday. I had my birthday off, and then it just was nonstop. Broadcast text and new models and essences and all sorts of fun things in the data. So it's been a pretty wild ride for the first, 2 or so weeks so far, and there's even more we haven't seen yet on the PTR.
That's always one of my favorite things about we'll be talking about something that's going on in WoW, and it's either in data mining or not in data mining. Like, I feel like you have very different life. Like, when data mining starts, I feel like you're on call 24/7. Yeah. Everything's on fire. It's really cool to see kind of what that process is like for you guys over there. And with 8.2, what are some of the biggest things to note for anybody who hasn't been keeping up to date with some of the stuff that has been data mined?
Yeah, so on a sort of big picture level, 8.2 introduces 2 new zones, Nazjatar, which has all this juicy quest info about Queen Ashara that I'm sure Novel talked about yesterday, and then Mechagon, which is very open world, and it's all very sandboxy. Apparently, it has more secrets per square foot than any other zone in the game, so really awesome for achievements. And then you also have the Heart of Essence system, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little more in depth later on, which is sort of Blizzard's way to revitalize the failing Azerite system. We have tons of new models that go along with this content. And if you want to maybe pull some up, we can look at them quickly. I have them in the notes. We have Nazjatar sets, Nazjatar weapons, and some PvP sets. I know the Nazjatar sets are not the most favorite ones, but the weapons I think are pretty sweet, and some of the PvP sets because they're all like particles on them and weird stuff. And I'm not sure if you guys talked about this much with Novel yesterday, but the story does continue. We get some really good Elven lore with Queen Ashara, and then we also have the war campaign continue with Bane in Chains. And we also have the Heart of Azeroth story finally take more of the spotlight with some really cool quests involving the Dragonflights. I don't want to get into spoilers, so you have to tell people to mute the stream. But there's a lot of pretty dramatic moments going on.
Man, Bane in Chains is one of the most badass sentences I've ever heard. Like that, I want that to be a book. That's fantastic. So we have systems to talk about. We talked a lot about the story with Novel, but one of the things that we didn't talk about that I wish we did talk to Novel a little bit more about, but I'd love to hear what you think about it, because there has been some stuff data mined about it as well, is potentially, wow, there's Bane in Chains. Oh, wow, it looks just as badass as it sounds. When we were actually looking at some of the data mine stuff, new allied races potentially. I do want to mention that before we get into anything else, because I know that's a pretty spicy topic. How do you feel about that?
So they did say officially there are no allied races in 8.2, but there is the 8.3. I mean, this is not the end of the expansion. So I think that the Mechanomes are getting lots. They're a race in the data, which means that they could very easily become an allied race, and they look super cool with all these mechanical arms and like goggles, and their legs are even mechanical stuff. I think they could be a race in the future, and that could balance out maybe the Vulpera coming in a future patch. I mean, we don't know, but the Vulpera also have that same level of customization in the dressing room, so you can, put all the stuff on them and try out all these weird custom emotes. So I think they could be coming in a future patch. You probably all saw this with Wowhead's April 1st joke, but I think that Lightbound Undead could be a thing.
I
Yes.
don't want that to be Kalia Minithel is canon. She's in the book. She needs to be in the game. Where is it?
Vulpera now? Oh my god, somebody named Vape Pira. Was it Vulpera now? Yeah, commit to something you love and be passionate about it. Vape Pira. Pour the Vulpera in the chat. I do think the Frisky Foxes we've all thought is going to be a reality for a while. I think
The Frisky Foxes. Did you really just call it the Frisky Foxes?
Would you rather I say Musky Husky? I don't know, man. As you see it, that's pretty much all I do. I just call it as I see it. But the robot gnomes, not something I expected at all, but I do think it could be pretty neat. Like it could be pretty neat if mecha gnomes were a playable race. I could see myself.
And it fits into a ton of the Tinker speculation that has been going on, between stuff like the Tinker team in the Island Expeditions, and then the 8.1 quest that reintroduced the gnome and goblin couple from Before the Storm. There is this sort of secondary thread of the gnomes coming back in, which would be pretty important if we hit up the old gods, because the gnomes, they were trying to be resistant to the curse of flesh, and curse of flesh goes back to old gods. So I don't know, they could also be comedic relief if we get into more old gods territory.
So
and then,
I do want to ask you as well to move away from some of that, which is so much speculation, right? Like we know that this is something that's very much speculation. You guys obviously have found some stuff that alludes to the possibility of it, but this is just us having a little bit of fun speculating. When we talk about the 2 zones that are coming up, that's not speculation. And you guys have found some interesting things as far as how rewards might look. I know you sent yesterday, I think there was a tweet that you guys put out that showed something that actually levels up gear, I think by 5 item levels per usage of it, up to item level 430.
The Asheron Purling upgrade system. So so Nagitar is closed on the PTR right now, so we can't actually go in there and see. But based on the data mining, I gave a link to Bay. He can maybe pull up the tooltips. We've got this Asheron Purling kit, and it says empower an Asheron item from Nagitar, making it pearled and increasing its item level to 400. And then another one that's called the Purling Enhancement, bind on account, empower a pearled item, increasing its item level by 5 up to a maximum of 430, which is the equivalent, I believe, of heroic loot from the 8.2 raid. So this seems to be like a Timeless Isle system where you can maybe loot some stuff from, I don't know, World Quest or Treasure Chest or Rare Spawns. And then once you have the item, you could earn this purling items through a bind on account currency called Mark of Ashara. So kind of working like Timeless Isle. We don't know 100% how it works, but it is very clear that you'll be able to get some item and upgrade it to a fairly decent amount, a good catch-up mechanism. If you're playing an alt or coming back, heroic eye-level loot is, nothing to snuff at.
Perk, you're probably going to make fun of me. When I saw you guys tweet it out, I read it completely wrong. I didn't read the old text, and I was like, oh my god, Titan
I was
Forge
waiting
is
for you to
dead!
talk about that, because I was watching the show yesterday. I was watching the show yesterday, and you were like, Titan Forge is over. I was like, Rich, I don't think you read that tooltip.
I didn't read it at all. I saw exactly what I wanted to see, and I was so happy until right now, and then I read it, and then I heard Perk say it, and I'm like, oh no, it's just Timeless Isle.
Yeah, it's only the pro.
You say just Timeless Isle, but Timeless Isle was probably one of the best catch-up mechanic areas probably ever.
One of the best
I'm excited
ever,
about it.
Period.
One of the best hubs ever. I'm very excited about that. Especially to play alts in there and to gear them up. That's a really fun way. I just hope they keep them BOA to where you can send the token pieces to other characters.
Right now they are BOA, and the currency is too. So obviously it's very early, so stuff could change, but I think right now it's on the right track since they're all BOA.
The interesting part of this too is that if you look at the armor tokens you get from Nagitar, So it's waist, wrist, head, chest, cloak, legs, feet, shoulders, hands. So that's not all that's like your actual clothing, but then there is ring and trinket from Mechagon that you customize and build yourself. So there is that way of, depending on what kind of player you are, and the ring, the customizable ring and the customizable trinket, because their secondary stat value is real high, that might be a thing that even like the higher end upper crust players look at, because having 400 of two main of your two like primary secondary stats, I suppose, like the ones that are really good for your spec, that's almost like building your own Arcano crystal. And how long did that trinket last?
It'd be cool if you see it like kind of continue a little, where it's like, all right, next tier, or next like a little content hub or area, it's like, all right, there's new versions of it, and that kind of like thematic, I guess, system kind of continues, and you see more of those, because those are really cool. Like,
well, I'm not 100% familiar. So basically, the thing that I did know is that the two zones basically split up those two rewards, which I do think is cool, because it also does allow you to maybe have the player decision, which I always think is a good thing to hear. Anytime I hear player decision, I'm excited to basically be like, oh, I want to focus on getting this right now because it's my weaker gear. And maybe you only go to one of the zones for a while. After you complete that, you're going to the other zone, or you have a bunch of content to do. You're actually going to both. I knew that those two rewards were split up. You basically get your clothing in one store, and then you go and you create your custom chain at the other one. But how customizable are these rings and trinkets? Like how much finagling are you actually getting to do and making it your own piece?
So there's a lot that you can actually do. We can actually pull some of them up maybe. I know in our Mechagon article, we wrote out what all the rings do. And what's really cool is that it's very program language. You've got rings called logic loops. And it's if you activate an ability when you do X, and then you've got another set of rings called bit bands, and it's ... then you gain something. So you pick the ring where you say, when I do something, I activate this magical ability. And then the second ring, you pick what the magical ability is. And right now, we data mine 4 of each, so that's a ton of combinations. And I believe from the feedback summit, they said that even more combinations were coming. And you have to think that this will continue, because if they add Mechagon as Mythic Plus in a future patch, then maybe some of this loot could drop from, be higher level, drop from caches, could, Titan Forge even more, and it could get pretty powerful at higher item levels.
This is actually so cool. I hope that these are very relevant pieces of gear as well, because they are that's very interesting. It feels like it's new. It's not like a crazy level of confusion, right? Like it's so easy for a new system to be more confusing than the power and funness level actually warrants. Honestly, I think that's one of the reasons that Azeroth gear is maybe in the place that it's in, right? But the other big reward that we're getting outside of this, that we know everybody's going to be interacting with, because it's not even going to necessarily be reliant on item level, is going to be the new stuff that's happening with the Heart of Azeroth. We mentioned it yesterday. If anybody wasn't watching, your necklace now is going to have 3 slots in it. One of those slots gets unlocked at 65, at level 65 for your neck. The other one is basically the major one that's going to be unlocked. And then you have a minor one that gets unlocked at 55, which is pretty much going to be baseline when we do get into 8.2. So you have one major and one minor. You're going to be grabbing essences, and we're starting to learn how some of those will be obtained now, and you can actually test them out on the PTR as well. They are going to be role specific, so all DPS are going to be selecting from a pool of essences, all tanks, all healers. And if you put one of the essences into your major slot on your neck, you get the major effect and the minor effect. If you put one into the minor slot, you just get the minor effect. So what have you guys actually found out, Perk, so far about how essences do work? Because I know, even as somebody who's played with them a whole bunch on the PTR, we're like, wait, so trying to figure out, like, where are we actually going to get these and all these different things. So what have you guys figured out thus far?
So we've found a lot of the sources for essences, which has brought us some interesting feedback, because based on the early descriptions of them, some essences that are really good for raiding and Mythic Plus might come from PvP. So there's a concern that you might have to do some activity you're not really comfortable with doing in order to get your best essence. And while most of them are role specific, there are 2 essences that are a pretty hot topic, especially the Vision of Perfection, because that has effects that are different for every single spec. So right now, it feels pretty imbalanced because while they all, it's like, oh, they all reduce a cooldown on something, but for some classes, that something is a lot better than other specs. So there is some concerns about balancing concerns there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
there was a big call out from Warriors specifically with like Avatar versus like, say for, I want to say priests, it wasn't very impactful, but for like if you're like a paladin,
hunter, So
dude, Demonology Warlock, it's nutty. Like you can actually have well, the thing is you can have multiple demonic tyrants down. So you can actually have 4 demonic tyrants. I've heard Marv told me at one point, oh man, I shouldn't call out names of people who like managed to do really crazy stuff when I am about to get Demonology nerfed again. Oh no, did I just get Demonology nerfed twice? Oh my god, twice in 1 month did I get Demonology nerfed? But yeah, so like I think that the potential thing that Perk has somewhat mentioned here, and I kind of want to hear, Perk, how you do feel about it. I feel like when we look at essences, one of the potentially cool things is the idea that you can have that asymmetry, even though everybody does have access to it. It reminds me of Mage Tower. Yeah, you might be doing the same boss fight, but because your toolkit's different, it's going to interact with these same things differently. I think the potential downside, though, is the fact that we're getting homogenized rewards instead of having specifically crafted. There are definitely like pros and cons to
right.
both.
Well,
I think that applies in like this case at least, because it's one item. It's one specific item ID, but it has different. It has different traits depending on what your class is. So it's not really homogenization, but it's more of them kind of being really intelligent with one specific item.
Yeah, I just don't want that one item to sort of mess up the balance of the whole master plan. If you have, 19 essences that, do the same thing across the board, and then you have like 2 essences that are like wildly, do very like specialized things for your class, and then like everyone wants the one essence that's good for their spec because they can sim it and they know it's the best one. So I'm just concerned that those 2 essences might kind of disrupt the vision for the system.
I see what you did there. Vision of Perfection. The other one though, or Lucid called. Is that the second one? Okay, so that's the one that gives you resources back, which is obviously going to be more impactful for some classes. And I'll be honest,
the ret one is insane. It's another DP. It's another divine purpose where it's like you get or not another divine purpose. It's giving you holy power back. And I think that they're even talked about, which was really interesting, where they talked about they're open to re-examining interactions that the current essences that they're thinking about might have with existing abilities and talents, which is super huge. So if anyone out there wants to give feedback to the dev team, they are actually asking if people want to make the case for those weird interactions. So in the case for, say, Rep Paladins, if you use a Divine Purpose, you could potentially get Holy Power back from that proc that gave you Divine Purpose. So you could get Holy Power from literally nothing from using a spender. They seemed pretty kind of open to that and wanting to hear from players as far as what specific cases for your classes do you think should function.
Yeah, and building upon that, I just want to reiterate and driving it home. I know with the Azeroth system that took forever to appear on the beta, and you needed an invite to test it. But with the Heart of Azeroth system, the PTR opened. Anyone can go on, and day one you could test out the Essences system. Now, it's not. There are still some drawbacks because obviously the raid isn't open for testing. Not all the group content is available, and I think that we'll maybe see some imbalanced things that pop up once the group content is. But yeah, you can definitely hop on right now and try out the essences and see what it's like doing open world content in existing dungeons.
Yeah, I messed around with it for a long portion of time. It's like one of those things as well where it's funny that it's the trait that's talked about. I think that that's an important thing to note. It really is the trait that's talked about the most, is probably Visions of Perfection. Like I played every single thing that sounded broken with Visions of Perfection out of curiosity. Like those were the classes that I was most drawn to try to mess with and try to get away with something in a weird way. It was like Metamorphosis. Can I be in it for the entire fight? Like different things like that. So important stuff to think about. Definitely. I feel like I was a little surprised though. I want to ask this right now, and this is kind of a weird question to ask, but I thought that the changes were getting rid of Azerite gear. Was there ever a place in any of your minds as well where it was like in 8.2 Azerite gear is gone and we're getting those traits?
No, there was. So we never reported on that, but there was definitely a wave of people thinking that, and I think some of my coworkers thought that too. They were like, "Whoa, it's like staying around," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I always thought that, but I guess it was vague in an interview." So I see where you are coming from. I think some interviews were like, "The Azerite system in 8.2 will be artifact-like," and people took that to mean it's like, "Oh well, the old system is going away because it's not like an artifact."
I was very surprised. That would have been one of those things too, where I'm curious as people who like, you know, whoever is in charge of like being a CM and things like that, what they think the community perception is. Like I feel like so many times, depending on how something is announced, the community perception may shift in the wrong way because because also it's like people hear stuff from other people, right? Like a lot of times you don't necessarily just read the blue post and you're seeing it a few times removed, especially if you're somebody who watches a lot of streams and things like that. So I know personally, as somebody who does tend to read up on a lot of the articles, you know, I thought that Azerite was gone for a little while, and then I actually got on PTR and I was surprised. I was very surprised. I'm kind of curious what the community perception is for, you know, people who might not even be looking up stuff yet, that maybe heard stuff through the grapevine, didn't test anything yet, and then they walk into 8.2. I wonder what they're expecting. And we definitely want to hear from you guys as well, chat, what you were expecting 8.2 to do with the Heart of Azeroth. But yeah, Bay, how did you actually, what did you think was happening in 8.2? Like, did you know that it was going to function like this? Were you a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised?
I don't know if I was expecting, I went over this on stream a few times. We're sort of rolling through the rest of the items from, this is from Mechagon right now real quick. But this is just like a jaw on a stick. But the Heart of Azeroth changes that were coming out, and once there was the interviews that came out with the devs, they're talking about what's on the horizon and how early into the expansion into BFA the devs knew that the Azerite system was not what they had devved out internally, or how the community took to it as they had planned. So I initially thought there was basically 3 ideas that would come out of this. And it all depends on when the dev team started working on the assets and started working on the development of the next system, essentially the Heart of Azeroth 2.0 that we have now on the PTR. And it was either that we're going to get, everyone gets the same thing, like 1 tank button, 1 healer button, 1 DPS button, almost like the rings we had in Warlords, right? That was going to be the shortest form of a response to make something else happen. And or the extreme, which we're not getting, was that many people thought, as you just talked about, how I thought it would be like this new artifact style system, all very spec class oriented stuff. That was going to be the other one. The super, if they started working on this right after the expansion launch, like, oh, this is not working. So we're basically making tiny artifact trees for every single spec in the game. That's 36 specs. So that's probably a little bit of a lofty goal. So we're working on that. So we got the middle ground, which is the one that I thought would be the one that would mostly work. And right now we have a teeter-totter on what works and what doesn't work. There are certain essences people are like, oh, wow. And there are certain essences people are like, oh, no. And that sort of depends on what your class or your spec or your role is about. And I think that a lot of the early thoughts, my blanket statement on this whole thing, a lot of the early essences and a lot of the things we're looking at right now are like, oh, these are kind of boring but powerful, but how do they work with X and Y and Z specs? Because there are some out there that, well, this doesn't really do much for mine, but others might be ridiculous. And the resource one, the Vision of Perfection, everyone's talking about being like the OP and my cooldown's up all the time, and I always feel cool now that my cooldown's always up, but that might not be what a Frost Death Knight needs. What if one of the other traits, one of the other essences that once you get to that major power, major minor, like a minor, and you have the epic version of the main one, that takes and breaks the game, and all of a sudden, Frost Death Knight is the strongest DPS in the game because of this Azerite layout and this major essence and this minor essence combination, and everyone's stacking Frost Death Knights because we don't know that yet, right? We're only going to have so much information from the PTR, the math and the theory crafter, guide writer, the Discord folks that are making all this stuff, the APL people that are like, how can we, because that's how the players are going to think, right? How can we bust this wide open for us, right? To be fun. And that's what they find fun. And then I wasn't going to name call in a poor way, but what if something comes out where Subtlety Rogue all of a sudden is the best single target DPS, and Fragnance figures it out, and all of a sudden every rogue does it? Because that's what's fun for Frag, to find something that just totally breaks DPS wide open for what he wants to do, because he's going to do those numbers, and then everyone else finds it, and then we work on it, and then Blizzard has to respond, and if they do or not, or if they let the game just kind of like go a little crazy for a little while.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you were describing a problem that the class team probably has and talks about every
day.
I feel like that relates to
Every day.
like the class stacking and sort of stagnation in the MDI. Like I don't think they want one class with one spec to be way ahead of the other, because then that's like, you know, it's boring. So I mean, that's why I hope they open up the group testing soon, because some of these really OP things you're not going to see, you know, on the Shara Eternal Palace fight unless people are actually in there, you know, trying to break stuff.
Yeah. And we're gonna get there. We'll have the dungeon soon, I'm sure, and then we'll have raid testing sometime down the road here in a number of weeks. So we'll see
let's
those
get
things.
Crucible done first.
It's important to highlight that the way it's set up now, this is actually it's good that they're focusing on this and they're having these conversations now where they're straight up asking, how does this mechanically feel? All that matters now is that it feels fun. If it's fun, you can make the numbers work.
Exactly.
Does it feel right? Which is important, that they straight up are asking, do you want these interactions? We see that you guys are talking about the potential of this interaction. Do you want this? Kind of sell us on this, that kind of thing. And then they can make it happen or not, and then they'll balance the numbers later to make it work.
Yeah, I think that's very important. After, you know, BFA, they had the testing very late, and then it's like, oh, this isn't fun. Everyone lost their artifact. They got new talents. This is boring. Leveling feels bad. And the discussion of fun wasn't really centered during the BFA beta. So I'm glad that they seem to be focusing on that more now in 8.2 to, you know, get back, you know, do all 36 specs feel fun, even if your spec is not like the very top one, you know, being featured at the MDI.
Yeah, I do think though, one of the things with like the MDI in particular, if you put the like certain players in that environment, like they're going to figure out the right answer. Like sometimes there just simply is a right answer in a system, and the best players, with the amount of time that they have to dedicate to the MDI, they're going to figure out that right answer if there is one. I think it isn't necessarily game design that needs to combat that, but potentially format, right? Like I think that there are ways to spice up the format to make that more interesting, and that's the esports job. The game's job is to be fun. And
I think there's a mix, because you know, there are different dungeons and different affixes the mobs have, and they change, but in every situation, it's like the same classes are just good in all situations. So maybe if, you know, certain classes shown more in dungeons, you know, Shroud was ridiculously OP, and that's why you want two rogues, or like some affixes, you know, preferred range DPS, maybe you could, you know, at least have a little more diversity. So, you know, like maybe some game design, but also, like you said, esports, maybe, you know, picking bands, some maps, some classes.
Because I want to dovetail off that real quick and bring up one essence in particular before we sort of move topics here, because these are role-based, or again, you have like 11 or so essences you can choose from. And there are certain sort of metas that evolve. And we've seen them shift and change one expansion to the next. This one in particular, right? It's currently on the PTR. Azeroth's Undying Gift. This is available to everyone in the game. Now, this is a 45-second cooldown, instant use, essentially a shield wall where you reduce all damage you take by 40% for 2 seconds, and then 20% for the next 2 seconds. There are certain, say, healers or tanks that have an issue with certain types of, say, affixes or damage intake, but all of a sudden, if they have this extra 45-second cooldown, 4-second duration additional DR, what changes do...
Wait, 8.2 doesn't come out before May 11th, does it?
8.2, I think, is going to be like July or June.
Probably,
okay.
There's
I just saw a world where the PvP tournament was...
my 3D chess prediction is all that, like, when the tournaments end, then we're gonna get you know, then we're gonna get 8.2 after that. So
this won't affect anything yet right now. No.
I think Perk and I talked about this last night, where it's like this is a really packed time frame where it's like 8.2 is gonna come up, and Classic has got to be really close to that, and then you also have oh God, what else was it? It was like the 25th anniversary of Warcraft as a whole. Like, there's a lot of really bunched up.
Yeah, which I mean, one of the topics we're going to talk about was just like a tiny digression was the content pacing, and it feels that Legion had a steadier build up with richer things to do at the start, like Suramar and like the class campaigns and the artifact specking. But the midpoint raid is going to hit roughly at the same point, and all of a sudden it seems like there'll be a ton of BFA stuff and classic stuff just sort of hitting all at once in this like hopefully May through July period.
It's a 200 IQ thought. What if it's all on purpose because for Final Fantasy 14's expansions at the same time? They're like, let's just do everything.
They don't launch content like that.
They wouldn't do that.
Oh man, I cannot wait for Classic. We're not going to talk about that though. That's not the focus here right now.
Yeah, Wildhead loves Classic, but another show.
I cannot wait. I am very excited for everything that's coming up with Classic, but we were talking a lot about Mythic Dungeons, and there's so much to unpack with that, and we're really going to get to dig into that tomorrow. Obviously, we're going to be covering everything Crucible of the Storms as long as the progression is going on, same time, same place. Bay and I will be here, and tomorrow, two of the guests are going to be experts in all things Mythic Dungeons. We're going to have Nagore, and we're also going to have Trekkie on, so we can really dive into some of those topics. And if you guys want to ask any questions ahead of time, you can do it on Twitter. You can do it in the chat tomorrow, because it'd be a little bit tough to remember all the questions if you ask them now. But Twitter's probably ideal. You can tweet.
No, ask them now. And if Rich forgets your question, rake him over the coals for it. That's his fault. He
just yell at me when I'm like staring up at the ceiling thinking about Classic because somebody mentioned it, and I'm like, oh yeah. Let me talk Classic. I think that there's a lot to talk about though with 8.2. Like to kind of go back, I know I mentioned the idea that I was kind of caught off guard with the fact that the neck functioned the way that it did. Like, I actually thought that what was going to happen was we were going to be able to boil down all of our Azerite gear, and the essences were going to come from our Azerite gear, and you were just going to basically have. I really
scrapper for Azerite.
I loved it. I thought we were just going to throw it all in the scrapper. And then I thought that the neck was basically going to look like an Azerite piece of gear. And then we were going to have the main essences to potentially lock in the middle instead of the item levels. And then we were just going to pick all of our Azerite traits going up the thing. And then once you've gotten an Azerite piece one time, you have that trait, and then you just basically get it. But no, that's not how it works. It's going to be a whole new system. And I'm definitely excited to see how that one does work. Is there anything about 8.2 that you feel like we're completely glossing over though, Perk?
Well,
probably.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, please continue.
Do we ever show some of the models on the screen? Because I feel like we could show some of the mount and armor models just so people could look at that. Because, I know if you're more casual, people like seeing that sort of thing on the screen. We also, there's a few things with the Azerite system I wanted to highlight, as well as mount equipment. Maybe we should spend a little bit of time talking about that, everyone's favorite topic.
Yes.
But yeah, before we move off of the heart of Azeroth, one thing that we cannot test yet, which I think will appeal to more casual people or those who like transmog, is that the legendary essences, not yet tested, have a really cool visual effect. And I would really like to know what they are, because, we're talking about, who are the people that don't read the blue post or don't, check Wowhead every day. If they could see this amazing effect, maybe they would get interested in the system again. So legendary level has this really cool cosmetic effect on every type. I don't know what they look like. Hopefully we'll know soon. I was really hoping there would be a transmog component to it, because that stuff was super popular on Wowhead for artifacts back in the day, and I just know that draws people in. But sadly, there's no permanent armor component to that now. But hopefully, it's a lot to add to a mid-expansion system, but hopefully they've learned a lesson that having a story behind the necklace, having some cool weapon customization, that sort of thing hooks people into a system. So maybe next system will have it.
That's one of my favorite things always when we do have conversations about WoW together, because you have a very different insight, right? I feel like when a lot of us, whether it's with streaming or being on particular shows, you see one facet of the community very well, and you're able to engage with that one facet of the community. But when you look at your site and kind of think about how people go to it, it's very much a combination of all of those communities coming together, and you guys can look at what people are getting excited about, and it seems very helpful. I know for for us, for like different podcasts and things like that, like we really have in the past tried to ask you questions about different things like that. So I love getting that insight. I was kind of looking at some of these character models right now, though. It's really cool to get to check some of those things out. But let's talk about mount loot. I think mount loot is really cool because it's a new type of reward, so therefore it's not saturated, right? Like there aren't a million of them right now. They all will feel very impactful. I know that there are some people in the community that aren't as excited. I know Caden doesn't want to lose his some of his paladin unique stuffs.
So that's already gone. That's already been removed. I just pointing out that there was an inconsistency here, and I want to see that inconsistency addressed potentially, and this system kind of highlight. It's a really, really cool, interesting solution, and I can't like praise it enough that it's finally solving a long problem since Mists of the Striders. Like the Striders have posed a really hard design problem where it's like you now have a mount that has water walking. What does everyone do? Everyone uses that mount. And
I know it's putting horses in extinction.
It's put every mount in extinction, and people will go get the mounts and they just don't use them. They just keep using their water striders. And then you go into BFA, which has a whole continent that's so focused on water.
You have like dinosaurs and both of them. It's just,
everyone just uses their water striders. Or if you're happen to be a shaman or a death knight, you can ignore that entirely because you're bullshit. But
yeah, but the thing is that I like about the Shaman and the Death Knight example is they still keep that level of individuality because they can actually throw on a different piece of mount equipment, and then they can use their water walking ability and basically get two advantages. I want to say right now, when I look at mount loot, I would love to see other aspects of the game kind of looked at like that. I would love if there were actually, and I actually was talking about this in a video that I made the other day, like one of the ideas that I think would be fantastic is if a pinnacle reward that comes from, whether it is something in a raid, whether it is something in a dungeon, if there was actually a slot that affected a particle effect on your gear, like a new slot, like you unlock a particle effect or something like that, like any opportunity,
like a mob challenge mode effect, like your shoulders do stuff when you cast. I think that would be cool.
That'd be
awesome. Exactly. Like I basically think that they should add slots.
I would use Shadowmourne all the time.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you could basically be like, okay, like there is a slot on your transmog now that allows you to get these challenge mode things and actually put them in. And there would be like a limited amount of those available, so it wouldn't be saturated. And when we look at mount loot, it essentially does that right now. Mm-hmm. When I was actually talking about it, and I know like right now, like everybody's going to be like, oh, you're an idiot, like saying this. Like my ideal version of it was every season, there were different things that completely changed what your spells looked like as well. And
sounds like an MDI or competitive reward.
Yeah, right. Like something like that. That would actually be really cool if you could change up a bunch of different things like that. So what are people going to be trying to collect in 8.2 perk besides different things like mount loot? How's it looking for the collectors?
So there are lots of cool mounts coming in 8.2. Let me see if I can get Bay a link so we can show some of them. There are these awesome horses.
Oh yeah, we already went through all those. I wanted to the first question that you need to answer right now. Where the heck is this big buzzy boy? Where is the bee mount?
So I have a whole data mining has shown that the bee mount seems like a Kuafon equivalent for the Alliance, where you have to collect the Bumble's pet, take Bumbles out, and find someone that you speak bee to, and you gain more reputation as you learn the bee language, and you move from like drone to bee to hive to queen. You keep going up in the system, and we think when you become the queen bee, you get the bee mount. So that's how we think it works.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
But I gotta go back up. Did you say Alliance only?
Yes, because Bumbles, I think, is Alliance only. And Ian at that Q&A was all like, well, Horde of dinosaurs, but Alliance has the B. So
it's so funny hearing that.
Already.
It's so funny hearing that whenever the B model was initially like shown off for it. I remember asking one of the designers at one point, I was like, do you guys know what you're going to do with the B mount? Because people really want that thing. And they're like, haven't figured it out yet. It's just really cool. They're like, it's just really, really cool.
It is awesome. It is really awesome. I love that idea of like, that kind of goes back to, oh God, what were they called? The Falcasaurs, right? Like they had a pretty unique way of like, you had to find these pets and then you leveled up the pets and then ultimately became a mount. I like things like that.
Falcasaurs really was amazing because all of a sudden it got very PvP and dark. Like you got the pet and then you had to get the reputation and then you had to kill kill things in World Quest and then Battlegrounds and then finally you got the mount. It was a very strange, twisted story, and that was another really popular guide on Wowhead during Legion. So
you want to ride this pet? Feed it your enemies. It's like,
yes,
so metal. I love that. No, I love little. Really does make the game feel like a world again, and you're running around trying to do all these things instead of just getting something to drop or doing an island or something like that. So I do hope that is maybe the way that the B mount is obtained. I definitely would try to get it. I know. Man, we're looking at the. I might be like delayed a little bit, but it looks
a little bit.
So good.
Yeah, since we're talking about mounts, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it does kind of remind you of like the old school like Winter Spring Frost Saber, where the first time you kind of hear that, you're like, I have to do all these things to eventually get it, and it feels like you're kind of attached to the progress rather than the reward itself.
Yeah, but that's an MMO, right? Like, because you set these different,
absolutely.
Yeah, especially when there's like, sometimes there's obviously stuff that caps it. Like there's like a little bit of time gating that is going to happen sometimes, but a lot of it is, it's like, okay, I'm going to log on today and I'm going to do this. And I love when there's also that moment where it's like, hey, if you follow the time gating that does exist, you're going to get it and it's not going to be too much of a headache. But if you're a freak, collect eggs for the next 1,000,000 hours of your life and you can get it 2 days earlier and you're just like, oh,
yeah. I love it when you have a block of time on the weekend and you can just sink it into a WoW project, because so often it's like, oh, we'll do this thing every day and then maybe you'll get an RNG reward. It's like, no, I can just like go for like 10 hours straight and then I can get my cool thing. And it was a lot of fun. And I think if you enjoy the process, I think that's good. It keeps you coming back to do the next fun project, in WoW, because after a certain point, the mounts do tend to blend together if, you've got 300 or 400, but, the enjoyment of collecting it is, I think, what sticks with you.
Yeah, and I think also like that goal setting that you can do, like actually going about and saying, okay, like today will do this phase of the reward. The next day I will do this phase of the reward. That player choice is so powerful. Like it is a very powerful thing and it gets people invested and also appreciate the mount more in the long run. I'm getting excited for 8.2 now. This has actually been really fun getting to look at a bunch of the stuff that is coming up in 8.2. And we're not even done with the stuff that's going on with the actual raid, with Crucible of the Storms. These guys are still progressing on this. And it seems like one of those things where I think maybe 4 more days. Is that what you guys think? Maybe 4 more days?
Well, they said it was the equivalent to Mythic Jaina, right? And then they made it seem like Restless Cabal was easier than it actually was. So maybe they are underestimating the difficulty of Uu'nat as well. So yeah, I think 4 days. I don't know if it could survive a reset. That would be pretty exciting if it did.
Hey,
People are saying pieces is 20%. Yeah.
I say 1 or 2.
Well, I mean, 20%. I said it was like 38% earlier, throwing out a random number. No idea.
Yeah, but you guys, you've been watching this the whole day. You're more qualified to
4 days.
But no, I was gonna ask Rich, because you're getting excited about 8.2 stuff. Where are you at with dragons? How do you like dragons in the game, in the lore?
Oh my God, are you talking about the void dragons right now? They need to strap some tentacles on these bad boys.
You mean this dragon?
Oh my goodness! If this thing gets tentacles on it, I don't want it to have a saddle. I don't want it to have a saddle. I want it to have tentacles on its back. No, I was thinking that maybe the tentacles like grip you into place and they just grip you and hold you over its back, and you're like squiggling around, and the tentacles, they need to add tentacles to this. Oh my goodness. What a dragon this bad boy is. I actually like the first picture that you guys posted of it. It was like very much enveloped in shadow, and I don't even think the eyes were picked up on the very first picture. And I loved how that looked. Like the eyeless voice. Oh, it looked so cool.
Yeah, really lively discussion. People are like, no, I want the eyes closed. I want them open. But it's badass either way. I love it.
It actually prompted me to tweet at you guys every single tweet for like 2 days, just like put tentacles on this. That we need more tentacles, more tentacles. I honestly like how get rid of sitting on the saddle. Like we do that on everything. Like just hold me with tentacles, and I'll be happy, and I will farm them out. I will farm for tentacles.
It should totally be a thing. There's actually a cool mount. Speaking of like cool like mounts that like you could have alternate riding styles on. There's actually a mount in Final Fantasy where it's a claw and it picks you up, and so the claw like floats around. I was like, that's a cool like little way to do it. That's not just a traditional way. It'd be interesting to see like what WoW could come up with.
Well, they've got the sideways crab mount, so
that's true. You do have a sideways crab now, so
yeah. So they're getting there. But yeah, no, mount equipment, add tentacles to mount if you socket that mount equipment. I like that idea.
Yes, that is the most important mount equipment. Please give us tentacles.
I would love cosmetic mount equipment. When they first talked about it, kind of similar to you had this preconceived idea of the artifacts. I was all like, like mount equipment is going to be like changing colors of mounts and like.
What if you could like change the dances, you change the specials? Yeah. Like, that'd be really cool. Like there'd be a crab one where the crab one does the dance and it plays the song of someone just got banned. So every time Preach gets banned for an exploit, you could just do the crab dance.
Whoa. The only reason that people are dancing is for extremely positive stuff, like the announcement of BlizzCon. I actually was... I had a tinfoil hat on for a while. I was like, is there not going to be BlizzCon? I was talking to Bay about it last night. Yeah. Well, so it's usually announced around April 10th, and I don't think it's been announced later than April 10th, except for one time when it was announced on April 22nd. Then we get past the April 22nd mark, and I was like, oh no, it's not happening. And finally, it did get announced today. So what actually got announced so far? I just saw the general announcement, Perk, but what did they announce with the fact that BlizzCon is coming? Yeah,
so BlizzCon, November 1st and 2nd. Tickets go on sale May 4th and 8th, but there are new things to learn with tickets this year. Everything is on sale those 2 days. There's no extra day for the benefit dinner. And there's a new tier of tickets, which is sort of like a VIP line skip extra access day called the Portal Perk tier. And the regular tickets are $229. The Portal tier is $550. And then the benefit dinner, I believe, is $750. And with the Portal tier, you also get stuff like you get to go to the whole Dark Moon Fair a day before, which is great because that stuff sells out super fast. So you essentially just get to browse with outlines. You have a special VIP lounge. There are festivities going outside of BlizzCon on the patio on that Thursday. They also announced that instead of a goodie bag, you can have your choice of one of two statues celebrating Warcraft's 25th anniversary, an Alliance soldier or a Horde, orc grunt. And if you are really torn on which to get, the other one will be on sale on the gear shop starting on May 4th. They're also using a new ticketing system as well. What are you saying?
Is there still the potential for like a more standard goodie bag, or is it just statues?
They just said, in place of the goodie bag, you're getting the statue. And actually, obviously I have a lot of stuff behind me. I like collecting things, but I think the past few years, they've always been doing, a bag with a bunch of little stuff inside of it. And I think it was time for a change. There's only so many BlizzCon backpacks you can have or, Hearthstone magnets. And I'm sure people like collecting the small stuff, but then you have other people that are saying, man, I wish I had this, big collectible that I could put on my desk as opposed to something that's small or not as much of a price value. So I think it's good they're trying to experiment with, one big statement item instead. Keep it interesting.
Yeah, I think my only thing with it is maybe go thematic, maybe add some tentacles to the statue as well.
I want a Queen Ashara statue. I was like, it's cool, but can I pick between like Jaina and Sylvanas and Ashara instead?
Yeah. I will say some of my favorite goodie bags were definitely like the Steins and things like that were in like the big boxes. The statue could be very cool though. I agree with you. I think switching it up is definitely very important when we have BlizzCon every year. We don't want to see the same goodie bag at all. Was there anything else announced that we should touch upon, Caden, with the announcement for BlizzCon, or do we think we kind of hit that?
I mean, I'm very. It's hard for me to talk about BlizzCon without knowing what I know. It's gonna be interesting. My heart goes out to everyone who has BlizzCon responsibilities because it's gonna be an interesting year.
It's a hard show to work on.
I have some tinfoil hat about what we're actually going to see with WoW at BlizzCon. So I'm saying tinfoil because
let's hear
I don't even know. I don't know if we're getting an expansion because everything has been slower paced in BFA. You know, we had 7.2 in March, but we have 8.2 in like June or July. And 8.25 is going to be a big patch because that's when we get Goblin and Worgen models. And my gut feeling...
it's not a safe conversation for me.
Yeah, this is not a safe conversation for Caden at all.
I can't participate.
Honestly, oh my goodness, though, new expansion, that would be so awesome if we just got
I would love it.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, it's typical, but I don't know. I think we're getting, maybe they reveal the end of BFA, like everything's on fire and crazy and Azeroth and like crazy cinematics and like all the stuff setting up for the next expansion, and then maybe we'd have the expansion reveal at like a more general convention like PAX because they did Legion at Gamescom. But I mean, I think we're getting WoW announcements either way. I just wonder if at BlizzCon they finally reveal like what's going on with Sylvanas or like what's going on with the old gods, and like, you know, all the fans are like, oh my god, now we've learned it, but like there's even more like things we don't know. Like maybe they announce like something crazy is happening to the factions or a third faction. Go ahead.
I want to make sure that this gets pinned into this conversation too.
Yeah.
That everyone always asks and talks about the longest time, the history of BlizzCon's years past. Always been 2 days. Never enough time. And now they have like the different, the tiered ticket, right? And that essentially does mean that for those extra diehard fans that want to go to BlizzCon, just to bring this up on screen again, that is a real third day. There is essentially BlizzCon the Thursday before the actual regular 2 days. So we're almost there. We're at like 2.5 days. Just go 3 days.
I don't know. That's like, I'm just thinking about
2 days as hard as it is.
I'm thinking about all the logistics too. Like if there actually is some, so like that's why I wasn't sure when the expansion was coming, because I'm like, if you're letting people into the convention hall the day before, like, oh my god, like all the security surrounding the leaks, that sounds like a nightmare.
I think it's
wait, Blizzard will need more help. Hire us back. Go 3 days. Go 3 days.
There you go.
It's so
I'm doing this for
funny,
you,
though.
Caden. This is for you.
Thank you.
Anyone who's ever worked on a show like the scope of BlizzCon, you're like, your reaction when somebody's like 3 days, it's like, wait, what if instead of that we just did a half day? That's it, just one half day for the whole show. Because it is so crazy the amount of work that actually goes into all of it, and also like, think about like all the rehearsals and all those things that are going on. So,
people don't realize this goes on for like 2 weeks before BlizzCon.
Oh yeah, I should mention that they said that the registration is moving off site to a different place, and Hall E is all Darkmoon Fair and more activities. So BlizzCon is growing in activities to do as well as the duration. So it's just like overflowing the entire convention hall.
Well,
and then there's the event outside as well. So it's just it's like a monster.
A lot to get excited for. Obviously, way off in the future. BlizzCon, now we know that that's going to be happening for the year. Also, there's 8.2 stuff that we can definitely get excited for. We got to talk to everybody about that today. But on the horizon, we may have Uu'nat falling soon. Is it going to be tomorrow? Who's going to get the world first kill of Crucible of the Storms? We're going to be doing our post-game show tomorrow, Bay and I, and very excited for it. And also, one more time, just to mention some of the guests that will be coming on, we're going to be able to do a deep dive, Bay, of all of the things with Mythic Plus, as well as we watch the progress from the day.
tomorrow we're going to be sitting down. So I have a two section part. We don't know if we're going to get one from Method on, depending on when their raid ends, but we know we're going to be talking about a lot of things, especially with the MDI oriented stuff. We'll probably wiggle in some of that Heart of Ajara potentially for the 3rd season of Mythic Plus. We'll have Trekkie and Nagura here tomorrow. Not just Rich and I. We'll at least have someone to distract us from these faces, because you're gonna get tired of these, because this is every single time.
Never.
I'm gonna be. I joined in the call today, and I was like, whoa, it's too much Rich too fast. I don't know where we're gonna be in like 8 weeks from now. You might have to send help. We'll see.
Well, that's the thing. We're gonna be doing this every day for 2 months.
Stop.
Even if it takes 2 months for Uu'nat to go down, we're here for 2 months. You and me, bro. Just you and me.
Oh gosh.
Oh, it's going to be good stuff. It's going to be very good stuff. Guys, you're not going to want to miss it tomorrow. And of course,
Just
you can
think of
also
how
watch
many more Uu'nat puns he could make.
No, please, Caden.
Uu'nat ready for that. Oh, you not ready. We'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. Thanks for tuning in.